All right, today we are diving into one of the most powerful tools ever invented. I mean, it shaped science, philosophy, and strategy for centuries. And the best part? You already have it. We're talking about thought experiments, the laboratory that's right inside your head.
So let's start with a little challenge. Imagine you had to prove a law of physics wrong. And not just any law, one that's been the accepted truth for 2,000 years, laid down by Aristotle himself. How on earth would you even start?
And get this, you have to do it with zero equipment. No fancy lab, no measurements, not even getting up from your seat. Sounds totally impossible, right?
Well, that is exactly what Galileo did. He just imagined tying a heavy cannonball to a light musket ball. Now, Aristotle's theory said the heavy object falls faster. So you have a puzzle. Does the light ball act like a little parachute and slow the cannonball down? Or does the combined object, which is now heavier than either one on its own, fall even faster? You see the contradiction? That paradox, which only existed in his mind, was enough to completely shatter Aristotle's theory. All pure thought, zero physical cost, and a 2,000-year-old idea just crumbles. That right there is the awesome power of a thought experiment.
So that powerful idea brings us right into our first section, the mind's laboratory. It's this amazing place where we can basically prototype reality without any of the risk. But what exactly is a thought experiment? I mean, it's not just sitting around and speculating. The best way to think of it is as a controlled simulation that you run on the hardware of your brain. You get to tweak the variables and then just observe the output. It's a structured inquiry, not some random daydream. Which, of course, leads us to how this whole thing works. If your brain is the hardware, then what's the software? What's running the show? Well, let's look at the engine of imagination.
The whole process really boils down to 4 key steps. First, you've got to question reality with a really potent what if. Then, step 2, you use your imagination to actually render that scenario. You visualize it. You build it in your mind with as much detail as you can. Step 3 is where you hit play. You run the simulation, letting the logic play out based on the rules you've set. And finally, you predict the outcome, carefully tracing where all the consequences lead.
You know, a perfect way to think about this is that imagination is the rendering engine. It's kind of like a video game engine, right? For a game to feel real, it has to have consistent physics. Well, it's the same here. Your imagination has to create a stable, coherent world for the experiment to actually mean anything. The better your visualization, the better your insight's going to be.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, but wait, how is this any different from just, making things up? And that's a fantastic question. It brings us to the really crucial rules that separate a rigorous thought experiment from a simple daydream.
And the distinction here is massive. A daydream, it's all associative and emotional. It's totally unconstrained, and let's be honest, it's usually seeking comfort. A thought experiment is pretty much the exact opposite. It's logical, it's deductive, and it's incredibly rigorous. It's bound by constraints. And maybe most importantly, its goal isn't comfort. Its goal is to hunt for contradictions, to actively try and break the hypothesis.
So where does that rigor come from? Well, it's got 3 key ingredients. First is abstraction. That lets you strip away all the messy real-world friction to get to the pure principle you're testing. Then there's deductive reasoning. That's the engine. It ensures that if your starting point is true, your conclusion is unavoidable. And then there's this really cool idea, conceptual falsification. You're deliberately searching for that one black swan, that single logical flaw that can bring the whole house of cards down. You see, you're not trying to prove you're right, you're trying your best to prove you're wrong.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly powerful, really rigorous mental tool. So where has it actually been used? You'd be amazed. Let's take a look at how these imagined scenarios have had a very, very real impact on our world. You can't talk about this stuff without mentioning the master himself, Albert Einstein. He called them Gedankenexperiment. That's German for thought experiment. His entire theory of relativity was basically born from one simple mental picture. What would the universe look like if I were riding on a beam of light? And this just brilliantly shows that visualization isn't just for artists, it is a serious instrument of discovery, even in the hard sciences.
But it's not all about physics and space-time. Think about this classic from moral philosophy, the trolley problem. Is it right to pull a lever and save 5 people if you know for sure it'll sacrifice 1 person? There's no data you can go out and collect to answer that. The only way to explore it is through this kind of non-empirical journey into our ethical duties.
And honestly, the applications are just everywhere. In physics, you've got Schrödinger's cat to explore the weirdness of quantum mechanics. In AI safety, researchers are mapping out future dangers with concepts like instrumental convergence. In the business world, they do something called a pre-mortem,
where you imagine your project has already failed spectacularly to find all its weak spots. And in geopolitics, the entire Cold War doctrine of mutually assured destruction is one giant thought experiment that thankfully we've never had to run for real.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway here? What is the true power that gets unlocked by that simple, two-word question, what if?
There is a fantastic term for this: epistemic leverage. Think of it as the yield from your thought experiment. It's the ability to gain a massive amount of insight for absolutely zero physical cost. It is, and this is no exaggeration, the most efficient form of research and development that exists.
I mean, just think about that for a second. Einstein, sitting in his office, came up with a fundamental law of the entire cosmos. The yield from that one thought experiment was, for all practical purposes, infinite. The potential return on investment for asking one really good question is literally limitless.
The amazing thing is, we all have this laboratory in our heads. We all have this powerful engine for discovery. And the only thing you need to turn it on is a question. So let me leave you with this. What is the one impossible question that you could start exploring today?